"Please, don't make me do this," Amara whispered, her hands trembling as she clutched the fabric of her uniform. The billionaire stood before her, his jaw clenched, eyes burning with an intensity that made her knees weak. In 60 seconds, everything she believed about him and herself would shatter forever. Welcome to Stories by Jason. If you're settled in and ready for a good story, hit that subscribe button and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I've got another exciting story coming your way tomorrow, and trust me, you don't want to miss it. Thank you so much for the love and support. You're truly appreciated, and I'm so grateful to have you here with me. The elevator doors opened with a whisper, revealing the private entrance to Marcus Ashford's penthouse. Amara stepped into the marble foyer, shaking rain from her coat as lightning illuminated the Chicago skyline through the floor-to-ceiling windows. 3 years she'd been cleaning this pristine fortress, and she'd learned to move through it like a ghost, invisible, efficient, gone before the owner even knew she'd been there. But tonight felt different. The storm outside wasn't just rain and thunder. It was the kind of tempest that made the building sway, that made even the wealthy feel small against nature's fury. Amara had almost called in, almost told the agency to send someone else. But she needed this job, needed the money that came from cleaning the homes of people who barely acknowledged her existence. She pulled her cleaning supplies from the hallway closet, the familiar ritual calming her nerves. Monday nights were always the same. Marcus Ashford worked late at his downtown office, and she had the sprawling penthouse to herself until well past midnight. She'd vacuum the imported rugs, polish the chrome fixtures, wipe down surfaces that probably hadn't been touched since her last visit. Then she'd disappear, leaving everything perfect, as if she'd never existed at all. Amara was halfway through the living room when she heard it, the distinct sound of the private elevator ascending. Her heart stuttered. He never came home early, never. The elevator chimed, and Marcus Ashford stepped into his penthouse, his tailored suit soaked through, his normally perfect dark hair plastered to his forehead. But it wasn't his appearance that froze Amara in place. It was his eyes. She'd seen those ice-blue eyes in magazines, on television, in boardroom photographs that hung in his study. They were always cold, calculating, ruthless. The eyes of a man who'd built a billion-dollar empire by the age of 35 through sheer will and strategic brilliance. But tonight, those eyes burned with something she'd never seen before: fear. "Miss Williams," his voice was hoarse, urgent, "I need to speak with you now." Amara clutched her cleaning cloth, instinct screaming at her to run. She'd heard stories about men like him, powerful men who thought their money bought them anything, anyone. Her friend Shanice had worked for a real estate mogul who'd cornered her in a bathroom. Another woman from church had quit a housekeeping job after enduring months of inappropriate comments. "Sir, I should finish and go. The storm." "The storm is exactly why you need to stay." He crossed the room in 3 strides, and Amara backed against the bookshelf. "Listen to me very carefully. In approximately 40 minutes, someone is going to arrive at this penthouse. Someone dangerous. And when they do, everything you think you know about me, about this place, is going to change." Thunder cracked so loudly that the windows rattled. Amara's fingers found the edge of the shelf, gripping it for support. "I don't understand. I just clean. I don't know anything about your business or—" "You know more than you realize." Marcus ran his hand through his wet hair, water dripping onto the Persian rug. "You've been in this penthouse 3 times a week for 3 years. You've seen things even if you didn't know you were seeing them, and that makes you a witness. It also makes you a target." "A target?" Amara's voice rose. "Mr. Ashford, I need to leave right now." He moved to block the elevator. "I can't let you do that, not yet, not until you understand what's at stake." He pulled out his phone, tapped the screen, and turned it toward her. "Do you recognize this man?" The photo showed a distinguished-looking man in his 50s, silver hair, expensive suit, warm smile. "That's Vincent Carrington, your business partner. His face is on half the buildings downtown." "Vincent Carrington is a monster." Marcus's jaw clenched. "And for the past 6 months I've been gathering evidence to prove it. Evidence of human trafficking, money laundering, blackmail networks that reach into city government, the police department, even federal agencies. He's been using our real estate holdings as fronts for operations that destroy lives. And tonight, he's discovered that I know." Amara's mind reeled. This couldn't be real. Things like this didn't happen to people like her. She cleaned houses. She went to church. She sent money to her mother in Atlanta. She didn't get caught up in billionaire conspiracies and trafficking rings. I still don't understand what this has to do with me, she whispered. Marcus stepped closer, and she could see the exhaustion etched in his face, the shadows under his eyes that no amount of money could erase. Vincent has cameras, hidden throughout his properties, including places he shouldn't have access to, including this penthouse. He's been watching, waiting, gathering his own evidence, not of crimes but of leverage. Anything he can use to control people, destroy them if they become problems. The words hit Amara like a physical blow. Cameras, here, but I've never seen. They're sophisticated, embedded in smoke detectors, picture frames, air vents. I only discovered them 2 weeks ago when I had a security sweep done. And here's the problem, Miss Williams. Here's why I need your help, and why what I'm about to ask you is going to sound absolutely insane. He pulled up another image on his phone. This one showed a schematic, a blueprint of the penthouse with small red dots scattered throughout. These are the camera locations. Most of them I've been able to disable remotely. But there are 3 that are different. They're not connected to any network I can access. They're standalone units with their own power source and storage, and they're all in the master bathroom. Amara's stomach turned to ice. The bathroom where I change before and after my shifts. The bathroom where She couldn't finish the sentence. The implications crashed over her like the storm raging outside. 3 years of privacy violated. 3 years of footage that could be used for God knows what purpose. Vincent is coming here tonight to retrieve those cameras, Marcus continued, his voice tight with controlled fury. He knows I've discovered his network. He knows I'm going to expose him. But if he gets that footage of you, of other staff members, of anyone who's used that bathroom, he'll use it. He'll release it online, threaten people with it, destroy lives just to distract from his own crimes. Then call the police, Amara's voice cracked. Call the FBI. Why are you telling me this? Because I can't prove which agencies have been compromised. Because by the time any legitimate investigation begins, Vincent will have destroyed evidence and disappeared behind layers of lawyers and shell corporations. And because, he paused, and something flickered across his face. Guilt. Because the only way to stop him from getting that footage is to destroy the cameras before he arrives. And the only way to do that without alerting him that we know he's coming is to remove them manually. While the cameras are still running, which means... Understanding dawned on Amara with horrifying clarity. You need me to go into that bathroom, she said slowly, and take off my uniform so you can access the cameras hidden in the walls. I need you to trust me for the next 30 minutes. Marcus's voice was raw. I need you to know that I take no pleasure in asking this, that if there was any other way, any alternative whatsoever, I would take it. But those cameras are watching. If I go in there alone, Vincent will know something's wrong. If you go in there and behave normally, then suddenly there's a plumbing emergency or electrical issue that requires me to access the walls. It might seem like terrible timing instead of a deliberate countermove. Amara's mind raced through the possibilities. She could refuse. She could run for the elevator, force her way past him, flee into the storm. But then what? If this man Vincent Carrington really was as dangerous as Marcus claimed, if he really had footage of her, wouldn't running just make her more vulnerable? Or was this all an elaborate lie? A manipulation to get her alone, vulnerable? Compliant. How do I know you're telling the truth? She demanded, surprised by the strength in her own voice. How do I know this isn't just... Marcus thrust his phone into her hands. Look at everything. The evidence files, the communication logs, the offshore account records. It's all there. I've been working with an investigative journalist named Sarah Chen. She has copies of everything. If anything happens to me tonight, if I'm arrested or killed or discredited, she publishes. The whole story comes out. Amara scrolled through the phone with shaking hands. Bank transfers in the millions. Text messages discussing shipments and merchandise that made her skin crawl. Photographs of young women who looked lost, terrified. Property records showing a web of shell companies. And there, buried in a subfolder, security footage from various locations showing Vincent Carrington in meetings with people Amara recognized from the news. A police chief, a city councilman, a federal prosecutor. Oh my God, she breathed. This is real, this is all real. I need an answer, Miss Williams. Marcus's voice was gentle now, almost pleading. I know what I'm asking is unconscionable. I know you have every reason to walk out that door and never look back. But in 35 minutes, Vincent Carrington is going to walk into this penthouse. And if we don't act now, dozens of lives, including yours, including mine, will be destroyed. Not because we did anything wrong, but because we knew too much, saw too much, existed in the wrong place at the wrong time. Lightning split the sky, illuminating the penthouse in stark white light. Amara looked at this man she'd cleaned for but never truly seen. This billionaire who the world thought had everything. And she saw past the expensive suit and the powerful reputation to something unexpected, desperation. And beneath that, something even more surprising, genuine respect for her choice. He wasn't going to force her, he was asking. If I do this, Amara said carefully, if I help you, what happens afterward? Afterward, I make sure you're protected. Full security detail, new identity if necessary, compensation for everything you've endured. And more than that, I make sure Vincent Carrington and everyone in his network faces justice. Real justice, not the kind that money can buy their way out of. Amara closed her eyes, thinking of her mother, her sister, the life she'd built through hard work and dignity. Then she thought of those young women in the photographs, the ones who looked like they'd already lost everything. Okay, she whispered, tell me exactly what I need to do. The relief that washed over Marcus Ashford's face was so profound it almost seemed to age him backwards, erasing the hard lines of stress. Thank you, God, thank you, here's the plan. As he laid out the details, Amara felt herself stepping into a different story than the one she'd woken up to that morning. A story where the black maid wasn't just invisible help, where the cold billionaire wasn't just a heartless mogul, where justice might actually be possible if two impossible people could trust each other for one impossible night. The storm howled its approval, and in the distance, Amara could hear the sound of another elevator beginning its ascent. Time was running out. The master bathroom was a monument to excess, Italian marble gold fixtures, a shower large enough for 4 people. Amara had cleaned this room 100 times, but she'd never truly seen it until now. Never noticed the small irregularity in the decorative molding near the ceiling. Never questioned why the air vent seemed slightly larger than necessary. Never looked too closely at the ornate mirror frame. Now, knowing what hid behind these beautiful surfaces, the room felt like a trap. I've disabled the audio, Marcus said from the doorway, his voice tight. But the visual feeds are still active. We have to assume Vincent is watching remotely, waiting to see if we've discovered his surveillance. So we need to make this look natural. Amara stood in the center of the bathroom, her cleaning supplies scattered around her feet, props in a play she'd never auditioned for. Her heart hammered against her ribs so hard she was certain the cameras could capture it. Natural, she repeated hollowly. How exactly do we make this look natural? Marcus pulled out a small device that looked like a phone but wasn't. I'm going to trigger a false alert to the building's maintenance system, a water pressure irregularity that suggests a pipe burst behind the bathroom wall. When maintenance responds, and they will because this is a $40 million penthouse, they'll need to access the walls. That's when we extract the cameras. And me, Amara's voice was barely a whisper. What's my role in making this look natural? The silence stretched between them, heavy with the weight of what he was asking, what she was agreeing to do. You need to be changing, Marcus said finally, his gaze fixed firmly on the marble floor. Not fully undressed, but enough that if Vincent reviews the footage later, it looks like terrible timing. Like I interrupted your normal routine to deal with an emergency. Can you do that? Amara thought of every moment in her life when she'd had to swallow her pride, her fear, her anger to survive. Every time she'd bitten her tongue when an employer made assumptions about her intelligence. Every microaggression she'd absorbed without reaction. Every space where she'd made herself smaller, quieter, less threatening. This was different. This time her dignity wasn't being taken, it was being asked for, and the asking somehow made all the difference. Give me a minute, she said. Marcus stepped outside, pulling the door almost closed but leaving it slightly ajar. Another detail for the cameras, proof that nothing inappropriate was happening in private. Amara could hear him on his phone, his voice muffled but urgent, triggering whatever systems would bring maintenance running. She turned to face her reflection in the ornate mirror, knowing that somewhere embedded in its frame, a camera was capturing this moment. For 3 years, she'd been recorded without her knowledge or consent. The violation of it made her want to scream, to put her fist through the glass. Instead, she took a deep breath and began unbuttoning her uniform. Her fingers trembled as she worked down the buttons, revealing the simple white t-shirt she wore underneath. She told herself this was no different than changing at the gym, than trying on clothes at a department store. But the knowledge of the watching cameras, the stranger who might be viewing this feed, made every movement feel weighted with vulnerability. She'd removed her uniform top and was reaching for her cleaning jacket when she heard it, a sound that didn't belong. Not the storm, not Marcus on the phone, something else. A click, mechanical, coming from inside the wall. "Mr. Ashford," her voice cracked, "something's." The lights went out. Not just the bathroom lights, everything. The entire penthouse plunged into darkness, broken only by the lightning that strobed through the windows. Amara's scream caught in her throat as she heard Marcus curse, heard him slam into something in the sudden blackness. "Don't move," his voice cut through her panic. "The cameras have backup power, this is." "Deliberate," a new voice finished. Cold, cultured, coming from the direction of the living room. "Really, Marcus, did you think I wouldn't notice you running a security sweep? Did you think I was that foolish?" Amara's blood turned to ice. Vincent Carrington had arrived early. She heard movement, multiple footsteps, more than one person. Her hands flew to grab her uniform to cover herself, but in the darkness she couldn't find it. She was trapped in the bathroom, half-dressed, caught in a nightmare that was escalating beyond anything Marcus had prepared her for. "Vincent," Marcus's voice was controlled, but Amara could hear the current of fear beneath it. "This isn't what it looks like." "Isn't it?" Flashlight beams cut through the darkness, sweeping the penthouse. "Let me tell you what it looks like from my perspective, old friend. It looks like you've discovered my insurance policy. It looks like you're attempting to destroy evidence. And it looks like you've dragged that poor woman into a situation she couldn't possibly understand." Amara pressed herself against the bathroom wall, her mind racing. The door was still ajar. She could see the flashlight beams moving in the living room, searching. If she stayed perfectly still, perfectly quiet maybe. "Miss Williams, is it?" Vincent's voice was closer now, just outside the bathroom. "I know you're in there. I know Marcus has fed you some story about heroism and justice, but let me offer you a different narrative. A successful black woman, a hard worker trying to make an honest living. Manipulated by a billionaire into a compromising situation. Cameras capturing it all. How do you think that story plays on the news? Who do you think the public believes?" The psychological warfare was expert. With just a few words, Vincent had reframed the entire situation, weaponizing race and power and public perception into a trap that would destroy Amara regardless of the truth. "Don't listen to him," Marcus called out. "Amara, whatever he says." "Oh, we're on a first-name basis now." Vincent's laugh was ugly. "How progressive. Tell me, Marcus, how much were you paying her for tonight's performance? Or was it threats? Either way, I have it all on video, every moment, every word." Amara's world was collapsing. She'd trusted Marcus. She'd believed in the possibility of justice. But now, half-dressed in a billionaire's bathroom while another powerful man threatened to destroy her reputation, her life, everything she'd worked for, she couldn't see a way out. Then Marcus spoke, and his voice carried something unexpected. Not fear, not defeat, but rage, pure crystalline rage. "You want to know what's on those videos, Vincent? You want to know what you've actually captured in your desperate attempt to maintain leverage over everyone in your orbit?" The flashlight beam stopped moving. "You've captured yourself," Marcus continued, and Amara heard him moving, heard something electronic whirring to life. "Because I didn't disable all your cameras, Vincent, just the ones in here. The ones in my study, my living room, my private elevator, those are still running. And they've been uploading to a secure server for the past 2 weeks. Every conversation we've had. Every visitor you've brought to discuss business that wasn't really business. Every single incriminating word." The silence was absolute except for the storm. "You're bluffing," Vincent said, but his voice had lost its certainty. "Am I? Check your phone, Vincent. Check the notification I just sent you. That's a live feed from your own cameras showing you and your associates discussing shipment routes through the port of Chicago. Time-stamped from last Tuesday. You remember Tuesday, don't you? When you used my penthouse for that meeting because you thought I was in New York. Amara heard fumbling, swearing. The flashlight beams wavered as someone checked a phone screen. That's not possible, Vincent whispered. The encryption. Your encryption had a backdoor. Your tech consultant, Jeremy Wu, has been on my payroll for 3 months. Every camera you installed, every system you thought was secure, has been feeding me data. The cameras in this bathroom. They're not even real, Vincent. They're decoys. I had them installed last week specifically to lure you here tonight, to force you into making a move while you thought you still had leverage. Amara's breath caught. It was a bluff. It had to be. She'd seen the schematics, the evidence, but Marcus's voice carried such conviction that even she almost believed him. Almost. You expect me to believe, Vincent said slowly, that you staged all of this. The security sweep, the false water emergency, getting your maid involved in some elaborate sting operation. Not a sting operation, a new voice interjected. Female, professional, coming from near the elevator. A citizen's evidence gathering, which, I should note, is perfectly legal when conducted on your own property regarding crimes you have direct knowledge of. The emergency lights flickered on, casting everything in dim red glow. Amara saw Marcus standing in the bathroom doorway, his body deliberately blocking the view inside, protecting her privacy even now. Beyond him, she could see Vincent Carrington and 2 large men who were clearly security, and near the elevator stood an Asian woman in her 30s holding a video camera and what looked like a police radio. Sarah Chen, Chicago Tribune, the woman said. And before anyone gets any ideas about tampering with evidence or threatening witnesses, I should mention that 3 unmarked cars containing FBI agents are currently parked outside this building. They've been listening to this entire conversation through the microphone Mr. Ashford has been wearing since you arrived. Vincent's face cycled through several shades of red and white. FBI, you involved federal. The interstate trafficking charges gave them jurisdiction, Sarah continued calmly. The money laundering through offshore accounts gave them interest, and the communications you've had with corrupt officials gave them motivation. Agent Harrison sends his regards, by the way. He's been wanting to build a case against you for 2 years. It was masterful. Whether it was true or another bluff, Amara couldn't tell, but the effect on Vincent was immediate. His shoulders sagged. His security team looked at each other with growing panic. The power dynamic had shifted completely. Here's what's going to happen, Marcus said, his voice carrying the authority that had built an empire. You're going to surrender your phone and any recording devices to Agent Harrison when he arrives in approximately 3 minutes. You're going to instruct your legal team to cooperate fully with the investigation. And in exchange, the prosecution might consider a plea deal that doesn't involve spending the rest of your life in a federal prison. And if I refuse, Vincent's last gasp of defiance. Marcus smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Then every media outlet in the city receives the complete evidence package by morning. Every photograph, every transaction record, every communication log. And Miss Williams, who you attempted to intimidate and whose privacy you violated with your illegal surveillance, gets to tell her story to the world. A story about a hard-working woman who risked everything to help expose a trafficking ring. A woman who showed more courage and integrity in one night than you've demonstrated in your entire life. Amara's eyes burned with tears she refused to shed. Not yet. Not while Vincent Carrington could still see her. She held herself perfectly still, drawing on every ounce of strength her mother and grandmother had passed down through stories of survival and resistance. The elevator chimed. The doors opened. And as FBI agents flooded into the penthouse, as Vincent Carrington's face crumbled into the realization that his empire was ending, Amara finally allowed herself to move. She picked up her uniform and put it back on with steady hands. She straightened her collar, adjusted her name tag, and stepped out of the bathroom to face the chaos with her head held high. Because she wasn't just the help anymore, she was a witness, a survivor, a woman who'd stared down power and refused to break. And the night was far from over. The penthouse transformed into a command center within minutes. FBI agents moved through the rooms with practiced efficiency, photographing, cataloging, securing evidence. Sarah Chen filmed everything, her camera capturing the fall of a man who thought himself untouchable. And through it all, the storm continued its assault on Chicago's skyline, lightning illuminating scenes of justice in harsh white flashes. Amara sat on the leather sofa she'd vacuumed countless times, a blanket wrapped around her shoulders despite being fully dressed now. An FBI victim advocate named Maria sat beside her, speaking in soothing tones about counseling services and legal protections. But Amara barely heard the words. Her mind was stuck on replay, processing everything that had happened, everything she'd been part of. Across the room, Vincent Carrington sat in handcuffs, his silver hair disheveled, his expensive suit rumpled. He looked smaller somehow, diminished. Two of his security team sat nearby, also restrained. The third had apparently started cooperating immediately, trading information for consideration. "Miss Williams," Agent Harrison approached, a kind-faced black man in his 50s who reminded Amara of her uncle. "I need to get your statement when you're ready. I know this has been traumatic, but your testimony is crucial." "I'll do whatever you need," Amara said, her voice steadier than she felt. "Just tell me where to start." Before Harrison could respond, Vincent laughed, a bitter, broken sound. "Start? You want to know where to start? Why don't you ask your hero Marcus Ashford about the real reason he needed you here tonight? Why don't you ask him what he was willing to sacrifice for his precious revenge?" Marcus, who'd been speaking with Sarah Chen near the windows, went very still. "Vincent, I'd advise you to remain silent," his lawyer said, finally arriving and looking harried. "Why, they have everything anyway. Might as well make sure everyone knows the truth." Vincent's eyes, bloodshot and wild, fixed on Amara. "You think you're a hero. You think Marcus saved you. Ask him about the deal he made 3 months ago. Ask him which organization he was willing to feed you to in exchange for information about my operations." Ice flooded Amara's veins. What is he talking about? Marcus crossed the room in 3 strides, his face pale. "He's lying. He's desperate and lying." "Am I?" Vincent gestured with his cuffed hands toward Agent Harrison. "Ask the FBI. Ask them about the initial proposal Marcus brought to them, about how he was willing to use his household staff as bait to catch me in the act, about how he specifically suggested using his maid because she fit the demographic of women I—" "Enough!" Harrison's voice cracked like a whip. "Mr. Carrington, you're making statements that could be construed as witness intimidation." But the damage was done. Amara was on her feet, the blanket falling away. "Is it true?" She looked at Marcus, searching his face for a denial that didn't come fast enough. "Did you plan to use me as bait? Did you know I was going to be here tonight and set this up deliberately?" "It's not that simple," Marcus began, but Amara cut him off. "Yes or no? Did you make a deal that involved putting me in danger?" The silence stretched for 3 heartbeats, 4, 5. "Yes," Marcus said finally, the word falling like a stone into water. 3 months ago, I approached the FBI with a proposal. I told them I had a potential witness who could testify to seeing unusual activity in this building. Someone who had access, who wouldn't be suspected. Someone Vincent wouldn't see as a threat. Amara felt like she'd been struck. "You bastard, you used me. You manipulated me. Everything tonight, the speech about justice, about protecting me, about respecting my choice, it was all theater." "No," Marcus stepped toward her, hands raised. "That's not the plan changed. I changed it. Once I realized what I was actually asking, what it would cost you, I couldn't go through with it. Everything I told you tonight was true. The cameras, the danger, the cameras that you just admitted to Sarah Chen were decoys." Amara's voice was rising. "You lied to me. You scared me into taking off my clothes in your bathroom while people watched, and it was all part of some calculated plan." Agent Harrison moved between them. "Miss Williams, I can clarify. The initial proposal Mr. Ashford brought to us was never approved. We have protocols about civilian involvement in active investigations, especially when those civilians are from vulnerable populations. The operation we actually ran tonight was significantly different from what he originally suggested." "Then what did you do?" Amara demanded, looking at Harrison. "What was the real plan?" Harrison glanced at Marcus, some unspoken communication passing between them. "The real plan was to get Vincent Carrington to reveal himself, to get him on record threatening a witness, attempting to intimidate, demonstrating the pattern of behavior we'd been investigating. Mr. Ashford's initial idea was problematic, but what he ultimately executed with our guidance and oversight was legally sound. Legally sound, Amara repeated numbly. What about morally sound? What about the fact that I was terrified, that I thought there were real cameras, that I was actually being recorded? There were real cameras, a new voice interjected. Jeremy Wu, the tech consultant Vincent had mentioned, emerged from the study carrying a laptop. Just not where you thought they were, and not recording what you thought they were recording. He set the laptop on the coffee table, turned it so everyone could see. On the screen was footage from the bathroom, but the angle was wrong. The camera was positioned high, near the ceiling vent, pointing not at the center of the room but at the far wall, where 3 small, obviously fake camera housings had been mounted at eye level. Decoys, Jeremy explained. Installed last week exactly as Mr. Ashford said. The real camera, my camera, installed with FBI authorization, was only capturing enough to verify that the decoys were in place and that any footage Vincent claimed to have would be exposed as fabricated. Amara sank back onto the sofa, her legs unable to support her. I don't understand. If the cameras were fake, if this was all authorized, why didn't anyone tell me? Why did Marcus let me believe I was actually being watched? Because we needed your reaction to be genuine, Sarah Chen said, closing her camera and approaching. I'm sorry, Miss Williams, I know that's not what you want to hear, but Vincent Carrington had to believe the threat was real. He had to think Marcus had discovered actual cameras, that you were actually at risk. If you'd known it was a setup, your reactions would have been different, performative, and Vincent would have seen through it. So I was a prop. Amara's voice was flat. A very convincing, very terrified prop in your elaborate sting operation. You were a volunteer, Marcus said quietly, kneeling in front of her so they were eye level. I know it doesn't feel like it right now. I know you feel betrayed and used, but I gave you a choice, Amara. I told you the danger was real. I asked for your consent, and you gave it. Based on lies. Based on the truth that mattered. Marcus's blue eyes were intense, desperate. The truth that Vincent Carrington is a monster. The truth that he's destroyed lives. The truth that someone needed to stand up to him, and that someone was you. The specifics of the cameras, the technical details of the operation, those are just logistics. What matters is that you made a choice to fight back against injustice. And because of that choice, because of your courage, 12 women who were being held in a warehouse on the South Side are being freed tonight. 23 victims of trafficking are getting their lives back. A network of corrupt officials is being exposed. Tears streamed down Amara's face. Don't you dare make this about them. Don't you dare use victims to justify lying to me. I'm not justifying anything. I'm explaining consequences. The consequences of your bravery. The ripple effect of one person deciding that enough is enough. Agent Harrison's phone buzzed. He stepped away to answer it, his expression growing animated. When he returned, there was something like awe in his eyes. That was the team at Carrington's warehouse, he said. They found 17 women, not 12, ages ranging from 16 to 34. 3 of them are from countries where they're listed as missing persons. This is bigger than we thought, much bigger. The room fell silent. Even Vincent seemed to shrink further into himself. Amara looked at the faces around her. The FBI agents who were just doing their jobs. Sarah Chen, who was documenting history. Jeremy Wu, who'd hacked a hacker to serve justice. And Marcus Ashford, who'd risked his reputation, his wealth, his freedom to stop a man whose evil had been hiding behind expensive suits and charitable donations. They'd all lied to her. They'd all manipulated her. They'd all used her. But they'd also trusted her to be stronger than they had any right to expect. The woman you mentioned, Amara said finally, her voice raw. The ones being freed tonight. I want to meet them. When they're ready, when they've received care and counseling and whatever else they need. I want to look them in the eye and know that what I went through mattered. Marcus nodded slowly. I'll arrange it, whatever you need. What I need, Amara said, standing, is to go home, to sleep, to process all of this without cameras and FBI agents and billionaires hovering over me. Can I do that? Or am I still a witness you need to babysit? Harrison shook his head. You're free to go, Miss Williams, but we'll need you to come in tomorrow to give a formal statement. And I'd recommend accepting our offer of protective custody, at least for a few days, until we're certain there's no retaliation risk from Carrington's associates. I'll arrange a security detail, Marcus said. The best. No, Amara's voice was firm. No more arrangements, no more plans involving me that I'm not fully informed about. Agent Harrison, I'll accept FBI protection. I'll cooperate with your investigation. But Mr. Ashford, you and I are done. You don't get to fix this with money or security or grand gestures. You don't get to be my savior. The words hit Marcus like physical blows. Amara, please. My name is Miss Williams, she corrected coldly. I'm the woman who cleans your house. That's all I've ever been to you, and that's all I ever will be. She walked to the elevator on legs that only trembled slightly. Maria, the victim advocate, followed to accompany her. As the doors began to close, Amara looked back one last time at the penthouse that had been her battlefield. Marcus stood alone in the center of the room, looking more lost than she'd ever seen him. Vincent sat in handcuffs, his empire crumbling, and through the windows. The storm was finally breaking, the rain becoming lighter, the lightning moving off toward the lake. The elevator descended, carrying Amara away from the penthouses and the billionaires and the complicated mess of justice and lies, down toward street level, down toward whatever came next. She'd been used, she'd been lied to, she'd been put through hell. But 17 women were free tonight because she'd said yes, because she'd been brave enough to walk into the bathroom, because she'd played her part even though she hadn't known it was a part. The elevator reached the lobby. The doors opened, and Amara Williams stepped out into her city, her storm, her life, with her head held high and her dignity intact. Whatever else had been taken from her tonight, they hadn't taken that. No one could ever take that. 6 weeks later, Amara stood in front of her mirror, not the ornate camera-embedded mirror in Marcus Ashford's bathroom, but the simple one in her own apartment on the south side. The woman looking back at her was different than the one who'd gone to work that stormy night, older in some ways, harder, but also stronger. The formal FBI statement had taken 3 days. The media interviews, carefully managed and entirely voluntary, had taken another week. Sarah Chen's exposé in the Tribune had won awards and triggered a federal task force. Vincent Carrington awaited trial on 47 counts including trafficking, racketeering, bribery, and conspiracy. 12 city officials had resigned or been arrested. The Chicago Police Department was undergoing its largest internal affairs investigation in history. And Amara had become, much to her discomfort, a symbol. The maid who took down a billionaire, one headline had read. Courage crosses class lines, proclaimed another. Her face was on news broadcasts, her story dissected in think pieces about race and power and exploitation and resistance. She hated it, and she understood the necessity of it. Her phone buzzed. A text from Dr. Michaels, the therapist the FBI had connected her with. Remember, you don't owe anyone your story. You don't owe anyone your pain. What you choose to share and when is your decision. Amara smiled. Dr. Michaels was expensive. Marcus was paying for the sessions, one of the few gestures she'd allowed him to make, and worth every penny. The trauma of that night didn't disappear just because the outcome had been positive. The betrayal didn't heal just because the lies had served justice. But slowly, session by session, Amara was learning to separate what had been done to her from what she'd accomplished, to own her power without being defined by her victimhood. A knock on her door. Amara checked the peephole, a habit she developed, along with always knowing where the exits were and never being alone with strange men. Maria stood outside, accompanied by 3 young women Amara had never met. But she knew who they were. Miss Williams, Maria said gently when Amara opened the door. This is Keisha, Diana, and Than. They wanted to meet you. They wanted to say thank you. The women filed into Amara's small living room, their nervousness palpable. Keisha was black, around 19, with her hair pulled back in a neat bun. Diana was Latina, maybe 25, with eyes that looked much older. Than was Vietnamese, petite and quiet, her hands folded in her lap. All 3 had been rescued from Vincent Carrington's warehouse that night. I don't need thanks, Amara said, because it was true and because she didn't know what else to say. I did what anyone would do. No, Keisha said firmly. You did what most people wouldn't. You were scared and you did it anyway. Miss Maria told us about the bathroom, about how you didn't know if you were being recorded or used, or you could have run. You chose to stay. Than spoke softly, her English accented but clear. In my country I learned a saying. The nail that sticks up gets hammered down. I was taught to be quiet, to not make trouble, but you stuck up. You made trouble for bad men. You showed me that sometimes the nail that sticks up changes the world. Amara's eyes filled with tears. You're all so strong, surviving what you survived and now rebuilding. We're strong because we're still here, Diana interrupted. But you're strong because you chose to fight for people you didn't know. That's different. That's special. They talked for 2 hours. About trauma and recovery. About the shelter where the women were staying, the job training programs they were enrolled in, the long road ahead. About small victories, sleeping through the night, laughing at a joke, feeling safe in a grocery store. And about justice. The upcoming trials. The prosecutors who seemed genuinely committed. The victim advocates who were fighting for compensation and restitution. The possibility, however slim, that something good might actually emerge from all this darkness. When they left, Amara felt lighter somehow, as if a weight she hadn't known she was carrying had been lifted. Her phone rang. Marcus Ashford. He called every week, always at the same time, always leaving the same message. Just checking in. No need to call back. I hope you're well. This time, for the first time, Amara answered. Mr. Ashford. The surprise in his silence was audible. Miss Williams, I didn't expect you to pick up. I met 3 of the women today, the ones from the warehouse. How are they? His voice was gentle, genuinely concerned. Surviving, healing, strong. Amara paused. They told me you've been funding their housing and treatment, anonymously. Why anonymously? Because it's not about me getting credit, it's about assuaging your guilt, Amara finished. About trying to make up for the fact that you used me, lied to me, put me in danger without my fully informed consent. Yes, Marcus said simply. All of that. I can't take back what I did. I can't undo the trauma or the fear or the betrayal. But I can make sure that every single person affected by Carrington's network gets the resources they need to rebuild. I can fund shelters and therapy and job training and housing. It doesn't make me a hero. It just makes me slightly less of a villain. Despite herself, Amara felt a smile tugging at her lips. You're not a villain, Mr. Ashford. You're just a man who made complicated choices in an impossible situation. Some of those choices hurt people, hurt me, but some of them saved lives. Both things are true. I don't deserve your forgiveness. I'm not offering forgiveness. I'm offering perspective. There's a difference. Another pause. The trial starts in 3 weeks. You don't have to testify if you don't want to. The prosecutors have enough evidence without your statement. I know, but I'm going to anyway. Amara had made this decision during her last therapy session. Not for you, not for justice in some abstract sense, but for those women, for everyone who's been made to feel small and powerless and invisible. I'm going to stand up in that courtroom and tell my story, all of it, including the parts where you lied to me. I understand. I don't think you do, Amara's voice hardened. But you will, because I'm not going to protect you, Mr. Ashford. I'm not going to make you look good. I'm going to tell the truth about what you did, how you manipulated me, how you put your goal of catching Vincent Carrington ahead of my safety and consent. And then I'm going to tell the truth about what I chose to do anyway, about how I decided that fighting back was worth the risk. Both truths matter. Both truths will be told. And after, Marcus asked quietly, after the trial, after all of this is over, what happens then? Amara looked around her small apartment, the one she'd kept despite Marcus offering to set her up somewhere safer, somewhere nicer. She declined. This was her home, her space, her life that she'd built with her own hands and her own work. After, I go back to cleaning houses, because I'm good at it and it's honest work, and I'm not going to let what happened define my entire existence. I'm not going to become the maid who took down a billionaire for the rest of my life. I'm just Amara Williams, and that's enough. It's more than enough, Marcus said, and she could hear the emotion in his voice. For what it's worth, Miss Williams, working with you, even in those terrible circumstances, was the most humbling experience of my life. You taught me something about real courage, about dignity that can't be bought or sold, about the difference between power and strength. Don't get philosophical on me, Mr. Ashford. You're a businessman, not a poet. He laughed and the sound was surprisingly warm. Fair enough. I'll let you go, but Miss Williams, thank you for answering, for telling me the truth, for being exactly who you are. Goodbye, Mr. Ashford. Goodbye, Miss Williams. Amara ended the call and sat in her quiet apartment as the evening sun slanted through her windows. In 3 weeks, she'd walk into a courtroom and tell her story. In the meantime, she had groceries to buy and laundry to do and a life to live. The next morning, she received an envelope by courier. Inside was a letter on expensive stationery. Dear Miss Williams, I want you to know that I've established a foundation in your name, with your permission, which I'm requesting now, not assuming. The Amara Williams Foundation for Trafficking Survivors. Its mission is to provide comprehensive support, housing, therapy, job training, legal advocacy, for anyone escaping exploitation and abuse. You would have full approval over all decisions. The board would answer to you. And if you decline this entirely, I'll establish it under a different name and you'll never hear about it again. But I hope you'll consider it, not because you owe anyone anything, but because your name, your story, your strength could be a beacon for others who need to know that resistance is possible, that one person can make a difference, that dignity and courage matter. The choice, as always, is yours. Respectfully, Marcus Ashford. P.S. I've also enclosed the deed to your apartment. You now own it outright. This is not a gift, it's restitution for the 3 years of unauthorized surveillance you were subjected to in my home. You deserve compensation for that violation. You deserve safety and security, and you deserve to never have to worry about rent again. Amara read the letter 3 times. Then she picked up her phone and called Dr. Michaels. I need to talk through something, she said. Something about power and autonomy and whether accepting help means losing control. 2 hours later, after a long conversation that circled through anger and gratitude and suspicion and hope, Amara made her decision. She called Marcus back. I'll do it, she said. The foundation, but on my terms, with my leadership, and with my story told my way, including the parts where you screwed up. Agreed, all of it, thank you, Miss Williams. And Mr. Ashford, the apartment, I'm accepting it, not because I forgive you or because we're friends, but because you're right. I deserve compensation, I deserve security, and I'm done pretending that accepting those things makes me weak or compromised. You could never be weak, Marcus said softly, and you could never be compromised. Your strength is yours alone. 6 months later, the Amara Williams Foundation opened its doors in a renovated building on the south side. It served 17 women in its first month, 50 by the end of the year. The waiting list grew longer every week. Amara quit cleaning houses, not because the work was beneath her, but because she'd found work that needed her more. She became the foundation's executive director, learning nonprofit management and fundraising and advocacy. She testified before Congress about gaps in the social safety net. She spoke at universities about the intersections of race and class and gender in trafficking cases. And every single time, she told the truth, the whole truth, including the parts where she'd been scared and manipulated and used, including the parts where she'd chosen courage anyway. Vincent Carrington was convicted on all counts and sentenced to 75 years in federal prison. The day the verdict was read, Amara stood with Keisha, Diana, and Than on the courthouse steps, their arms linked, their faces turned toward the cameras. This is what justice looks like, Amara told the reporters. Not perfect, not clean, not simple, but real, and worth fighting for. Marcus Ashford attended the trial every day, sitting in the back row, never seeking the spotlight. When it was over, he approached Amara in the courthouse hallway. I'm proud of you, he said, for everything you've built, everything you've become. I was always this person, Amara corrected gently. You just gave me a platform to show it. No, I gave you an opportunity. You gave yourself the platform. There's a difference. They stood in silence for a moment. These two people who'd been thrown together by circumstance and conspiracy, who'd hurt each other and helped each other and emerged changed. Are we ever going to be friends? Marcus asked. Amara considered. Maybe, someday, When enough time has passed that I can think about that night without feeling violated. When I can look at you without remembering how you made me undress in your bathroom while I thought cameras were recording me. That's fair. But we can be allies, Amara continued. We can work together for the same cause. We can respect each other's contributions while acknowledging the harm that was done. That's something. That's everything, Marcus said, and extended his hand. Amara shook it, and in that handshake was an understanding, a mutual recognition of complicated truth, that people could be both heroes and villains, that justice could emerge from lies, that strength could grow from trauma, that sometimes the story of how we rise is more important than the story of how we fall. 5 years later, Amara stood on a stage in downtown Chicago, looking out at an audience of 500 people gathered for the Amara Williams Foundation's annual gala. The foundation now operated in 12 cities. It had helped over 3,000 survivors. It had influenced legislation in 4 states. And Amara had written a book about her experience, not a memoir of victimhood, but a manual for resistance. Standing Up When the World Expects You to Kneel had spent 14 weeks on the bestseller list. At a corner table sat Marcus Ashford with his wife Alina, a civil rights attorney he'd married 2 years earlier. They donated generously to the foundation, but no longer sat on the board. Alina had suggested the change, arguing correctly that Amara needed to lead without the optics of billionaire oversight. It had been the right decision, and it had allowed Amara and Marcus to finally, tentatively, become something like friends. 5 years ago, Amara said into the microphone, I was a maid cleaning a billionaire's bathroom when my life changed forever. I was terrified, angry, violated, and forced to make impossible choices. I've told that story 1,000 times now, but tonight, I want to tell you a different story. A story about what happened after. She looked out at the audience, survivors and advocates, donors and journalists, politicians and activists. People who'd come together because they believed in second chances and fierce dignity and the power of collective action. After the fear came the work. After the violation came the healing. After the exploitation came the empowerment. And after one woman said yes to standing up, thousands of others found their own voices to say, enough. That's the real story. Not what was done to me, but what we've built together in response. The applause was thunderous. And as Amara left the stage, as she hugged Keisha, now the foundation's outreach coordinator, and Diana, who'd started a successful catering business with foundation support, and Than, who'd earned her nursing degree and volunteered at the foundation's health clinic. She felt something she'd thought was lost forever that stormy night 6 years ago. Peace, hard-won, complicated, imperfect peace. Because justice isn't a destination. It's a practice. A daily choice to keep standing up, keep speaking out, keep believing that change is possible even when it feels impossible. And if one terrified maid in a billionaire's bathroom could start a movement, could free thousands, could transform trauma into triumph, then anyone could. That was the real lesson, the one Amara would spend the rest of her life teaching. The story wasn't about Marcus Ashford or Vincent Carrington or FBI investigations or courtroom dramas. It was about her. About every person who'd ever been told they didn't matter, their voice didn't count, their resistance was futile. It was about standing up anyway. And that story, that truth, could never be taken away. What would you have done in Amara's shoes? When that bathroom door closed and she had to make an impossible choice with no time to think, would you have run, or would you have stayed? This story isn't just about one woman's courage. It's about every single time we're faced with injustice and have to decide whether to look away or stand up, whether to protect ourselves or risk everything for people we don't even know. Amara could have walked out. She could have prioritized her own safety, her own dignity, and no one would have blamed her. But she didn't, and because of that choice, that terrifying, magnificent choice, 17 women were freed that night, 12 more in the following weeks, thousands in the years since. A foundation was built. Lives were transformed. A monster was brought to justice. That's the power of one person saying, yes, when everything inside them is screaming no. If this story made your blood boil at the manipulation Amara endured, you're right to be angry. if it restored your faith that justice can actually prevail against wealth and power, your right to feel hope. Both emotions matter. Both drive change. Drop a like on this video if you believe one person can make a difference. Let's get this story to 100,000 likes to show the world that we're hungry for narratives where courage wins. Comment below with the words Justice SERVED if Amara's story resonated with you. Share your own experiences of standing up against impossible odds, or tell us about someone who inspired you to be brave. This community thrives on shared stories of resistance and resilience. Subscribe and hit that notification bell because we're just getting started. This channel is dedicated to uncovering stories of ordinary people doing extraordinary things, stories the mainstream media ignores because they're too complicated, too uncomfortable, too real. We've got 8 more stories filmed and ready, each one featuring someone who chose justice over safety, truth over comfort. But here's the truth. None of this content reaches the people who need it most unless you share it. Unless you send this video to your friend who's feeling powerless right now. Unless you post it on your socials with a message about why it matters. Unless you talk about it at dinner, at work, in your communities. Because the real power isn't in one Amara Williams standing up. It's in all of us recognizing that we could be Amara Williams. That any day, in any moment, we might face our own bathroom door, our own impossible choice. And when that moment comes, will we run or will we stand? This channel is a community of people who choose to stand. People who are tired of watching injustice happen and feeling helpless. People who want to believe that individual action still matters in a world of billion-dollar corruption and systemic oppression. You belong here. Your voice matters here. Your courage, even if it's just the courage to watch these stories, to engage with them, to share them, creates ripples that become waves. So do it now. Like, comment Justice SERVED. Subscribe, share, engage, be part of the movement that says we're not backing down, we're not staying silent, and we're not accepting a world where the powerful always win. Because they don't always win. Vincent Carrington learned that. And every corrupt politician, every abusive boss, every system designed to keep people down needs to learn it too. Welcome to the resistance. Welcome to the community. Welcome to the fight. Now let's go change some lives.